Have you ever wondered why your heart so often feels heavy? Sometimes it's just something that happened long ago, yet you still carry it around like a stone on your back. Sometimes it's a careless word from someone, but you hold on to it so tightly that it becomes a wound that never heals. Life is already exhausting enough, yet we often burden ourselves with things we don't need to carry. In the Buddha's teachings, there is an art called the art of letting go. Letting go is not giving up, nor is it losing. Letting go is freeing yourself from the chains of the past, from the invisible attachments that cause you pain. Just like a hand that is clenched too tightly cannot receive anything new, only when it opens can it welcome happiness. Ancient Zen stories still echo to this day, offering simple yet profound lessons, from the overflowing teacup to the two monks and the young woman at the riverbank. From the raft, carried long after crossing the shore, to the grieving mother searching for mustard seeds to save her child. All of them remind us that letting go is the path to freedom and peace. Welcome to Buddhism Seeds, a place where we share simple Buddhist stories that can transform the way you see life. If these messages touch your heart, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. In doing so, you help plant seeds of peace for many others. And now, I invite you to join me on the journey of the art of letting go, the Buddhist path that guides us toward lightness and peace in every breath of life. 1. The story of the overflowing cup. Humility as the doorway to wisdom. There is a Zen story that feels timeless. Each time I recall it, it still shines with meaning, like a mirror reflecting today's life. Long ago, at the foot of a high mountain, there was a quiet little village. In that village lived an elderly Zen master known throughout the region. He was not famous because of having many disciples or giving powerful sermons. People came to him simply to sit quietly by the porch of his humble hut, to look into his clear, gentle eyes, and to feel their hearts calm in a mysterious way. The villagers often said the old master didn't need many words. He taught through his quiet presence, through the way he lived each day, and through a kind smile as gentle as the spring breeze. Many said that just looking at him was enough to feel peace spreading in their hearts. One day, a young man came seeking guidance. He was well educated, a lover of books since childhood. As he grew older, he traveled far, met many wise teachers, and read countless scriptures. He studied Confucius, Laozi, the Buddha, even philosophers from distant lands. Deep inside, he believed he had gathered a vast treasury of knowledge, enough to be called learned. When he heard of the Zen master, he felt compelled to visit, not only out of admiration, but also with the hidden hope that the master would confirm, "You already understand so much." At the core, he longed for recognition, to be seen as someone already full of wisdom. That day was clear, and bright sunlight gently falling on the path to the master's hut. The young man bowed as he entered. The master nodded with kind eyes and invited him to sit. Before the master even asked, the young man began speaking endlessly. He recited everything he had learned, the views of philosophers, doctrines of the universe, of life, of self, and non-self. He quoted, compared, argued passionately, as if to prove he was not just eager to learn, but truly rich in knowledge. The master sat quietly, listening with no judgment, only nodding occasionally. He never interrupted or contradicted, allowing the young man to continue until even he began to tire. His voice slowed, and at last he stopped, breathless. The room grew quiet, filled only with the sound of wind slipping through the cracks and birds singing outside. The master smiled gently and said, "You must be tired from your long journey. Let me pour you a cup of tea." The young man felt a small swell of pride. He thought, "At last the master will acknowledge me, perhaps share some great teaching." The master lifted the teapot and slowly poured into the small cup on the table. The warm aroma of tea spread softly. The tea rose to the brim, but the master did not stop. It overflowed, spilling onto the table, dripping to the floor. Alarmed, the young man cried out, "Master, stop! The cup is full, it can't hold any more." The master looked up, his eyes bright like a new moon, and said calmly, "And so are you. Your mind is already full of what you think you know. Unless you empty it, no matter how much wisdom I pour, it cannot enter." In that moment, the young man felt as if a fresh wind swept through his soul. Shame and awakening rose together. He realized he had not come to learn, but to prove himself. He had carried a cup already full, leaving no space for anything new. The lesson was simple, yet piercing true. Learning begins with humility. A full cup cannot receive more. A proud heart cannot receive wisdom. Only when we let go of the "I already know" can we truly grow. Humility is not lowering yourself. It is the courage to say, "I don't know it all. I am ready to listen." A mind that is empty, like an open cup, is the true foundation of wisdom. That day changed the young man. People later said he spoke less, listened more. He no longer rushed to prove his brilliance, but instead practiced quietly, turning inward. Slowly, he came to see that wisdom is not about piling up knowledge, but about living mindfully, keeping the heart open, like an empty cup, ready for fresh water. The story of the overflowing cup leaves us with this clear teaching. If the mind is already full, nothing more can enter. Without humility, wisdom cannot take root. As long as we cling to ego, we live only in the illusion of sufficiency. Sometimes the first step toward wisdom is not learning more, but letting go. Do you see yourself carrying around a full cup, full of judgments, of "I already know," of biases toward others? If so, try setting it down just once. Let your mind be empty, so there's space for new things, for wisdom, and for peace. In the end, a cup only has value when it still has room. Do you realize that many times we are just like that overflowing cup? Our minds stuffed with opinions, judgments, and biases. We believe we know, and because of that, we no longer have space to listen. We talk more than we listen. We argue more than we learn. And in the end, we receive nothing new. The Zen master in the story never scolded the young man. He gave him a lesson through an image anyone could understand. The tea spilling over is just like knowledge prejudice and ego overflowing inside us. To take in more, we must leave space. To truly learn, we must begin with humility. Do you see how those who are truly wise rarely boast? They are like fertile soil, always ready to receive new seeds. Those who believe they already know everything are like barren land, unable to welcome anything more. In daily life, you can ask yourself, where is the teacup in my heart right now? Does it have space, or is it already too full? Watch yourself when you are in conversation. Do you really listen, or are you only waiting for your turn to speak? Are you open to a new idea, or do you immediately reject it because you think you're right? If your cup is always full, then wisdom passing through your life will only spill away, leaving nothing behind. But if you know how to let go, how to be empty, then every word, every experience can become a lesson. One day, you will realize humility is the first step toward wisdom. And letting go of ego, letting go of "I already know," is the way to open the door for wisdom to enter. The Zen masters of old did not teach through dry theory. They used the image of the teacup to awaken the student. And that lesson, even 1,000 years later, still holds its value for you, for me, for all of us. So if you want to learn, if you want to live more peacefully, ask yourself, am I ready to become an empty cup? The story of the full cup is not only about knowledge, it is about every aspect of life. In love, if you are too full of preconceptions, you cannot truly understand the other person. In family, if you cling to your ego, you will not listen to your loved ones. In work, if you think you are always right, you will not progress. Only by emptying yourself can you make room for understanding, for love, and for change. And that is the great lesson. Letting go does not mean losing. Letting go simply means creating space so that better things can come in. Just like a room crammed with old furniture has no space for light or fresh air. Only when you clear it out does it become bright and open. Your mind is the same. The old Zen master poured tea not to waste it, but to teach that emptiness is the condition for fullness. The story is simple, yet it makes listeners pause in silence, because it doesn't just speak of that student long ago. It is a mirror reflecting us today. Do you notice that in modern life, we too often resemble that full cup? Our minds filled with worries, prejudices, comparisons, and even the hidden pride of "I already know." When we receive advice, a new perspective, or even a life experience, we quickly fit it into our existing framework. And so, nothing truly sinks in. Many times you may hear someone share something wise, a profound story, a valuable lesson, but because you already think you know, you dismiss it or listen half-heartedly. Just like tea overflowing the cup, no matter how much is poured, nothing more is kept. I remember once, a friend came to me saying he felt his life was always stuck. His job was stable, his family peaceful, yet he still felt empty inside. As I listened, I realized he kept repeating phrases like, "I think this, I already know that there's nothing new in it." He didn't see that this very mindset of knowing it all left him no space to learn, to receive, or to change. He was like a full cup. No matter how much happiness you try to pour in, there's no room. In truth, all of us are like that at times. At work, you might believe your experience is the most correct, so you struggle to accept new ideas. In family, you might think you already understand your loved ones, so you no longer want to listen. In spiritual life, you may feel your current beliefs are enough, so you don't open yourself to another way of seeing. But have you ever asked yourself, if you keep holding so tightly, will your heart ever truly open? The Buddha taught that to walk the path of enlightenment, one must first have humility. Humility is not lowering yourself. It is knowing you can still learn. Humility is the key that opens the door to wisdom. And to be humble, what you must do is let go. Let go of "I already know." Let go of clinging to personal views. Let go of the ego that insists on being right. Do you see that sometimes what causes us suffering is not lack of knowledge, but too much attachment? The tighter we cling, the less we can receive. Just as a clenched fist cannot accept a gift, only when you open your hand can you receive something new. The mind is the same. In life, you will encounter countless opportunities to learn from a word spoken, a book, an experience, or even a hardship. But those opportunities only become lessons if you open your heart, if you let your mind be empty like a cup with space. If not, everything just passes by, like tea spilling over the edge, leaving nothing behind. Have you ever wondered why some people, though they read much and study much, still remain restless, uneasy, and unable to find happiness? Perhaps it's because that knowledge only piles up but never sinks in. Without letting go, without emptying wisdom, has no soil to take root. I believe the lesson of the full cup is not just for the student of old, but a reminder for all of us today. If you want a peaceful life, if you want to find true serenity, begin by learning to let go. Let go of prejudice, let go of pride, let go of, I already know. When you can do that, your heart will open, wisdom will come closer, and peace will naturally follow. You see, humility is the first step to peace. It is no coincidence that those who are calm and quiet often carry a light in their eyes. They do not need to prove anything nor show off their knowledge. They simply listen, receive, and let go. And it is that simplicity that creates strength. So next time you hear a story, a teaching, or advice, ask yourself, is there still space in the cup of my heart? If there is wisdom and peace can flow in. If not, perhaps it is time to let go so that life can become lighter. 2. The story of the two monks and the young woman by the river. A lesson on letting go of the past. In modern life, you and I have both lived through moments when the mind clings tightly to something that has already passed. It might be a hurtful comment that echoes in your head, even though it lasted only a few seconds. It might be an old mistake. You've apologized, the other person has forgiven you, but you still haven't forgiven yourself. It might even be a relationship that ended years ago, yet the moment you hear a familiar song or see an old place, your heart tightens as if it were only yesterday. We often tell ourselves, I've moved on. But deep down, we are still carrying the past on our backs. It no longer exists outside, but it has become a burden inside. In the Zen story I want to share today about two monks and a young woman by a river gives us a clear mirror for this. Long ago, in a distant countryside, two monks were walking together across wide fields. The road they traveled was rough and dusty at times. The sun burned like fire at times. The wind carried the dampness of the previous night's rain. The summer sky was clear blue with drifting white clouds, but the dirt road was muddy, stamped with the footprints of travelers. The two monks had journeyed together for many days. They kept the familiar quiet of monastics, few words, much listening. The sound of their steps mixed with the wind birds and insects forming a steady rhythm like a wooden fish drum accompanying a long recitation. After a while, a large river appeared ahead. The night's rain had caused the water to rise muddy, swirling, rushing fast. Waves crashed against hidden rocks with a loud roar. There was no bridge, no boat, only the vast current blocking their way. The far bank was the road they had to take to continue their journey. Right at the riverbank, they saw a young woman. Panic flickered across her face. Tears rimmed her eyes, and her thin clothing was partly soaked by the spray. She had been standing there for some time, her legs trembling, afraid to step in. The current was too strong, her body too small, her long skirt cumbersome like a trap that could pull her down at any moment. Her eyes were full of despair. She looked around, hoping for help. When she saw the two monks, a spark of hope lit her gaze. She bowed and said, her voice shaking, "Revered sirs, please help me. I must cross to the other side, but I cannot go by myself." In that instant, one of the two monks did not hesitate. He stepped toward her, his eyes calm. He bent down and said gently, "Climb on. I will carry you across." The young woman was embarrassed, but the steadiness in his voice and eyes reassured her. He stooped and lifted her in both arms. Without delay, he stepped into the rushing river. Icy water wrapped around his legs, sharp hidden stones scraped his skin. The strong waves shoved and pulled at times, making him stumble. But he kept his balance, holding her firmly so she would not slip from his arms. She trembled, but gradually felt at peace as she sensed the steadiness of each of his steps. The other monk stood watching, his brows knitting. Unease rose in his heart. He remembered the precepts monastics must guard themselves, avoid physical contact with women. What is he doing? How can he carry a young woman? He thought, but remained silent. After a struggle, they finally reached the far bank. The monk set the young woman down. He smiled kindly. "You are safe now. Go on your way." Tears ran down her cheeks as she bowed. "I am grateful to you, Master. I will remember this always." Then she turned down a narrow path and gradually disappeared behind the trees. Her footsteps faded, leaving only the sound of the river. It seemed the story ended there, but for one person, it continued. The two monks resumed their journey. The road ahead was still long, over hills, past fields, past sparse thatched roofs. But the air between them was no longer as peaceful as before. The remaining monk, the one who had not carried the woman, walked on with a troubled heart. He felt uneasy and restless. His face grew heavy, his eyes repeatedly flicking toward his companion, as if to question him, yet holding back. He walked in silence, but it was no longer a tranquil silence. It weighed on him like a stone, slowing his steps. A persistent voice rose within him. He has broken the precepts. We practice to keep the rules. How could he do such a thing? How could he carry a young woman in his arms? Is that still pure? That voice repeated again and again, turning into a verdict in his mind. Hours passed. He remained silent, but his face tightened more and more. At last, unable to bear it, he burst out in reproach. "Brother, we are monastics. We must keep the precepts strictly, keep our bodies pure. How could you carry a young woman like that?" His words rang out, cutting through the stillness, heavy and full of judgment. His companion, the monk who had carried the woman, stopped. He turned eyes bright yet calm. He smiled gently and replied, "I put her down at the riverbank long ago. Why are you still carrying her now?" The answer pierced straight into his heart. The other monk fell silent. He stood still, speechless. That brief sentence opened a door and shone a light directly onto the truth within him. He realized his companion had truly let go the moment the task was done. But though he had never touched, the woman had been clutching her image in his mind, carrying it like a burden. He was the one who had not let go. He was the one carrying the young woman the whole way. In that moment, he saw the difference clearly. One person let go and felt light. The other clung and felt heavy. The story ends there, but its lesson echoes to this day. We people, living in modern society, are often like the second monk. How many times have you carried what is past, making your present journey heavier? You may remember someone who hurt you. Though many years have gone by, whenever it is mentioned, pain still stabs your heart. The other person may have forgotten, but you have not. You are still carrying them through each day. You may think of a mistake of your own, a past decision, an act you regret. You keep repeating, "If only," as if you could turn back time. But the past is over. What remains is the burden you keep placing on your own shoulders. Or perhaps you are holding on to a relationship that ended long ago. The other person has moved on. but you still carry their image, letting that shadow bind your every step in the present. What makes us suffer is not the event itself, but our refusal to let it go. A word, if you let it pass, will fade like the wind. But if you hold on to it, it becomes a wound. A loss, if you accept it, becomes a memory. But if you cling to it, it turns into chains that drag you down. You see, one monk carried the young woman across and set her down, then continued on. The other never touched her, yet carried her image the whole way. One let go the moment the task was done. The other kept it in his heart, and thus weighed down his own steps. That story is a mirror reflecting your life and mine. How many times have you been like the second monk, carrying what is past, making today's journey heavy? We often fail to realize that each day we add burdens to ourselves. Like a traveler who, instead of leaving a stone by the roadside, hoists it onto his back and carries it from mountain to valley. In today's modern world, this becomes even clearer. You may see someone constantly complaining about a former job, about an old boss who treated them unfairly. Even though they've moved on to a new workplace, that memory still follows them, making them guarded and fearful. They are carrying their own young woman by the river. You may meet people who have been divorced for many years, yet every conversation still circles back to old wounds. Outwardly, they've put that relationship down, but inwardly, they are still carrying it. Or perhaps it's you sometimes still carrying a memory, a regret, or a reproach. And you see how that makes you heavier, more tired, unable to move forward lightly. The first monk's reply, "I set her down by the river long ago. Why are you still carrying her?" is a reminder for all of us. Letting go does not mean forgetting. Letting go means putting it down at the right time. It may remain in memory, but no longer as a burden. It stays as a story, not a chain. You cannot change the past, but you can choose how to live with it. You can keep it inside and let it torment you, or you can put it down so it becomes nothing more than an ordinary trace. I want you right now to ask yourself, in my heart, is there a young woman by the river I am still carrying? It might be a sad memory, a mistake, a broken relationship, or a lingering regret. If so, remember this: you have the right to set it down. Not because it is unimportant, but because you deserve freedom. The image of the two monks is just like the two ways we humans live. One does what needs to be done, then lets go. The other keeps holding on inside, as if carrying an invisible burden on his shoulders. In life, many times, you may have been like the second monk. Maybe someone once hurt you a word, an action, perhaps small, but you remember it endlessly. You carry it day after day, and whenever a situation reminds you of it, the wound bleeds again. The other person may have forgotten long ago, but you have not. You carry it inside like a heavy stone, each step more exhausting. Sometimes you remember your own mistakes, a wrong decision, a misstep, a carelessness that left you with regret. You replay it again and again. If only I had done it differently. If only I had chosen otherwise. But the truth is, what's past is past. No matter how much you regret, time will not turn back. What you can do is take the lesson from it, then put it down. But often we don't. We keep holding on, letting the past cling to us, tormenting our hearts. Have you ever noticed that what makes us suffer is not what happened, but our refusal to let it go? An insult, if you release it, fades like a cloud. But if you hold it inside, it becomes a wound, then hardens into hatred. A loss, if you accept it, becomes a memory. But if you cling to it, it becomes a weight, dragging you down each day. We often ask, why am I so tired? Why can't I find peace? But have you considered, maybe it's because you are carrying too much inside, refusing to set it down, like a traveler who, instead of leaving a stone by the roadside, insists on hauling it over every mountain and through every valley. I remember a woman once confided in me. She was over 60, yet her heart was still full of wounds from her younger years. She spoke of a husband who betrayed her, of friends who abandoned her, of failures in her career. Though decades had passed, she told them as if they had happened yesterday. Her eyes were heavy, her voice trembling. I asked her, "Do you know why you haven't found peace? Because you've never truly put those burdens down. You see, the past is like a river. It has already flowed by. The water will never return upstream. Yet we clutch one drop in our palm, lamenting that it slips away, unable to be held. Instead of letting it go, we try to hold it, and that very holding causes our suffering." The monk who carried the young woman let go the moment his task was done. He set her down at the riverbank, and in his heart, he set her down too. That's why he walked on freely. The other monk did not. He set her down outwardly, but in his mind, he still carried her. And so every step was heavy. In your life, there will surely be things you must carry across the river. Responsibilities, duties, unexpected situations that fall to you. But the real question is, when it is over, can you set it down? Or will you carry it for the rest of your life? Letting go does not mean denying, nor does it mean being indifferent. Letting go simply means accepting that it is finished and refusing to let it bind your heart any longer. You may still remember, but remember with calm. You may still tell the story, but with a smile, not with tears. That is true letting go. Many people think letting go is the hardest thing. But in truth, not letting go is what's hard. Because when you don't let go, you must carry the weight all your life. When you do let go, you are freed instantly. Perhaps it's time you ask yourself, in my heart, how many burdens have I not yet put down? It might be an old relationship, a hurtful word, an unfinished dream, or a regret. If you are still carrying them, then with each passing day, each step you take, the load grows heavier. But if you learn from the monk in the story, knowing to set it down when the time comes, you will feel your heart lighten. The present will become easier to breathe. Each breath will feel fresher, each day brighter. And that is peace. The story of the two monks and the young woman by the river teaches us that the real burden is not on the shoulders, but in the mind. One may set something down in the world outside, but if the heart hasn't let go, it is still being carried. That's why the lesson is not just about action, but about attitude. Each time you feel heavy inside, remember you may be carrying something no longer necessary. And peace will come the moment you set it down. If you want your life to be lighter, learn to set down what has already passed. The past is gone. Holding on only exhausts you. Let it go, and you will see the present open wide, clear, bright, and full of peace. 3. The story of the jar and the stone. Only when you let go of the stone can your hand hold the fruit. Long ago, there was a small village nestled at the foot of a mountain. The seasons there were always peaceful in the morning mist spread across the meadows. At noon, golden sunlight covered the thatched rooftops. In the evening, the breeze whispered through the bamboo groves. The villagers lived simply working hard, yet gentle in heart. In the village, everyone knew of an old teacher who lived in a humble hut near the stream. He was known not only for his deep knowledge of the scriptures, but also for his kind heart, his ability to listen, and the way he shed light for others. People came to him not just to study words, but to rediscover their lost peace. Those who sought him out were many. Some longed for enlightenment, some wanted release from suffering, some were lost in life's choices, and some simply wanted to understand themselves. The teacher welcomed all without distinction. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were as light as the wind and as nourishing as the rain. One morning, as the sun rose behind the trees, a young man appeared in the village. His face was bright, his eyes full of passion. He had traveled to many places, met many teachers, read many books, and heard many philosophies. Yet the more he learned, the more restless he became. His mind was full of questions without answers. His heart felt heavy, as though carrying an invisible stone. He believed the old teacher in the small hut could give him the answer, so he went to find him. When he stepped into the yard, he didn't notice that his hand was clenched tightly around a rough stone he had picked up along the way. Perhaps it was just a habit. Perhaps he thought it didn't matter. Either way, he kept holding it without realizing. The teacher was sitting on the porch. Morning light fell across his worn brown robe, making him look both simple and dignified. He lifted his head, his eyes kind. The young man bowed, then sat down. The teacher didn't immediately ask about the unrest in the young man's heart, nor did he begin a long lecture. Instead, he picked up a ripe fruit from a basket beside him. It glistened in the sunlight, its skin smooth and taut, its fragrance gentle. He held it out and said calmly, "Take this. It is my gift to you." The young man's face lit up. He quickly reached out his hand, but at once he stumbled. His right hand was still gripping the gray stone. No matter how he tried, he could not hold the fruit as well. His left hand was clumsy and weak, unable to hold firmly. He tried to catch the fruit, but it was too smooth, nearly slipping to the ground. Sweat broke out on his forehead, his face flushed. The more flustered he became, the more awkward he was. A simple gift had turned into an embarrassing struggle before the teacher's eyes. The teacher remained calm, his gentle smile never fading. He waited until the young man stopped, then asked softly, "Do you truly want to hold this fruit?" The young man exclaimed earnestly, "Yes, I do." The teacher nodded. "Then why don't you let go of that stone?" The young man froze. He looked down at his hand. The stone was small, gray, meaningless. It had no value, no use. Yet somehow, he had held onto it all along, and now it was the very thing preventing him from receiving the gift. He opened his hand. The stone dropped to the ground with a dry clack. In that instant, his hand was empty. The teacher placed the fruit into his hand. This time, he held it firmly. The cool weight in his palm amazed him. How fragrant, beautiful, and precious the fruit was, so much more than the worthless stone. In that moment, the young man understood something profound. Sitting silently, he realized the stone was a symbol of human life itself. We so often clutch stones in our hearts. They may be old memories we refuse to release. They may be hatred that weighs us down. They may be regrets, the endless if-onlys. Or they may be endless cravings, wanting more, wanting higher, wanting to outdo others. We say we want happiness, peace, freedom. Yet our hands are already full of stones. To hold both stones and fruit is impossible. Only by letting go of the stone does the hand become empty. And only when it is empty can it receive the fruit, symbolizing peace, wisdom, and true happiness. The teacher needed no long sermon. He used only a stone, a fruit, and a short question. And from that, the young man learned a lifelong lesson. Let go of what is useless to receive what has value. You cannot clutch garbage and expect flowers to bloom in your heart. Letting go is opening the door for happiness to enter. The young man bowed, holding the fruit in his hand. But deeper still, he felt the space that had opened in his heart. He understood that to study the way to find peace, the first step is learning to let go. This story is not just a tale from a distant village. It is a mirror for each of us. Ask yourself, is there a stone in my heart taking up space? Is there a memory I cling to that makes my present weary? Is there hatred, regret, or craving keeping me from peace? If so, remember, letting go is not losing. Letting go means making your hand empty. And only when empty can it receive what is truly worthwhile. The story ends here, but the lesson is endless. Do you see only when the young man dropped the stone? Could he hold the fruit? If he had tried to keep both, he would have lost them all. This may sound simple, but it reflects our very lives. In our minds, each of us is holding invisible stones. Sometimes they are hatreds from old wounds. Sometimes they are regrets over lost chances. Sometimes they are fears and anxieties about the future. And sometimes they are endless ambitions keeping us from ever feeling enough. We say we want happiness, peace, love. But if our hearts are already full of stones, how can they have space for fruit? We often grip these invisible stones. They may be old memories, hatred, regrets, or cravings. We say we want more happiness, more peace, yet our hearts are already full. To keep both at once is impossible. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you want to begin a new chapter, but you're still holding on to the old? You want a healthy love, but you keep clinging to the shadow of a past one with all its anger. You want peace, but you hold tightly to anxiety, comparison, and blame. Then how can your heart have room to welcome what is good? In modern life, we often pile on unnecessary burdens, possessions. We don't need relationships that have run their course, worries that serve no purpose. And yet, strangely, we refuse to let go. We keep holding, afraid of loss. We keep holding, thinking, someday we'll need it. We keep holding simply out of habit, unwilling to have empty hands. But can you see? The more we hold, the more our hands ache, and the heavier our hearts grow. The stone now takes many forms. It may be the phone you hold all day, filling your mind with comparisons and envy from social media. It may be the thought, I'm not good enough, driving you to chase success without ever enjoying the present. It may be a job you left long ago, yet it still haunts you whenever you think of it. All these things, if you keep clutching them, will leave no hand free to receive peace, even if it comes. Letting go does not mean forgetting everything. It does not mean dismissing the past. Letting go means admitting, this is finished, and I will not let it take up space in the present anymore. The memory may remain, but only as a story, not as a burden. Like that stone, it may once have seemed important, something you needed to hold. But when the time comes to receive the fruit, you must put it down. If you don't, you will miss the precious gift waiting for you. You can try asking yourself, what stone am I holding? It might be a relationship that has ended, a harsh word from the past, or an unfinished dream. If so, remember this, you have the right to set it down. Not because it is meaningless, but because you deserve to have space for happiness. And you will see, just by opening your hand, just by letting go, you immediately feel lighter. Like dropping a stone into the water, you hear a single plop, and then the surface becomes calm again. Your hand is empty, but not empty for nothing. It is empty to receive fruit, love, and peace. Once I met a middle-aged man. He was successful with a home, a car, and a stable job. Yet his face was always tense. He confided that despite having everything, he still felt restless, as if something was missing. As we talked, I realized he was holding too many stones. They were unnecessary rivalries, constant comparisons, the obsession that he always had to be more successful than others. He longed for peace, but his hands had no space left. He could not let go, so happiness could not enter. You see, sometimes living lightly is not about adding more, but about removing. Not about accumulating endlessly, but about releasing. Just like your room, if it is crammed with useless things, there will be no space for sunlight or fresh air to enter. The heart is the same. When it is full of meaningless things, joy has nowhere to rest. You may ask, but letting go is so hard. How can I do it? I understand. Because letting go is not just an action, but a whole process. But think simply. You cannot hold on to trash and expect flowers to bloom in your heart. If you cling to resentment, if you keep clutching painful memories, how can peace enter? If your hands are full of useless things, how can happiness find a place? I remember a woman in her 50s once told me she had spent more than 10 years resenting a close friend who betrayed her. She said during all those years, she lived in bitterness every time she thought of it. Her heart tightened. But one day, she became exhausted. She sat quietly and asked herself, what am I gaining by holding this stone? Does the other person even know I suffer? Or am I only torturing myself? That day she began to practice letting go. At first it was very hard, but each time anger rose up, she reminded herself, put it down. Slowly she felt lighter. When she shared her story with me, she said, I didn't forgive that person to make them feel better. I forgave so that I could be free. Have you ever felt that way? The feeling when a burden in your heart is finally set down and suddenly it's as if a cool breeze flows through your chest. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is simply opening a door. When the door opens, happiness finds its own way in. In the Buddha's teaching, all clinging is the cause of suffering. We suffer not because of the event itself, but because we cling to it. Once we let go, suffering dissolves. Imagine your hand gripping a heavy stone. All you need to do is release it, and instantly your hand feels lighter. You don't need to add anything, just put it down. Peace is often that simple. I want you to think of yourself. Right now, what stones are you holding in your heart? They might be old memories, relationships that no longer exist, vague fears, or unrealistic desires. Do you really need to keep them? Or are you only making your heart heavy? Happiness is not far away. It is only waiting for you to make space. Only when the hand of your heart is open can happiness step in. The student in the old story had to release the stone before he could hold the fruit. Your life is the same. If you want true happiness, start by setting down what you no longer need. When you practice letting go, little by little, you will see your heart grow brighter, lighter, and peace will come naturally. So if today you still feel weary, ask yourself, what am I holding so tightly that I refuse to release? And when you dare to let it go, you will realize happiness has always been right here, just waiting to enter. On the path to peace, it is not about piling on more knowledge, more possessions, more fame. Sometimes that path begins with putting things down, putting down hatred, putting down regret, putting down blind ambition. A cup only has value when it still has space. A hand can only hold fruit when it is no longer clutching a stone. And your heart is the same. Only when it releases can it truly make room for wisdom and happiness. The story of the stone and the fruit is a gentle reminder: do not fear letting go. Because only when you let go do you truly have. 4. The story of the raft. Across the river. True freedom comes from letting go. In today's hurried life, we often accumulate so many things: knowledge, beliefs, habits, even past achievements. Some of these once saved us in difficult times, once propelled us forward. Yet strangely, the very things that were once helpful can later become burdens if we do not know how to let them go when the time has come. Long ago, the Buddha told his disciples a simple parable, yet one filled with power. It was the story of a traveler and a raft. Once a lone traveler passed through a strange land. The road he walked brought him to the bank of a wide river. After a great storm, the river raged, its waters muddy and violent, carrying broken branches, rocks, and heavy logs. The crashing of waves against the shore sounded like thunder, shaking anyone who stood nearby. On the far bank, where his eyes could see, lay a safe land. The road stretched wide and clear, green trees stood tall, and sunlight poured across fields alive with energy. That was the land of safety where he could continue his journey. But the bank where he stood was full of danger. Thorny bushes grew thick, their branches sharp as knives. Venomous snakes slithered under the dry leaves, ready to strike. In the shadows of the dense forest, predators' eyes glowed, waiting to pounce. The air was heavy, each breath weighed down with fear. The traveler stood still. Before him was the raging river. Behind him, the darkness of danger. If he stayed, he would be trapped forever in suffering and fear. But if he tried to swim across empty-handed, the current would surely drag him under. He sighed, eyes uncertain. This was a moment between life and death. For a long while he stood in thought, studying the world around him. Then an idea sparked. If I cannot swim across on my own, I must find another way. Nature always provides what can be used. He began gathering branches broken from the storm. He cut climbing vines and tied them together. He laid large light leaves to cover and reinforce the top. Piece by piece he bound them into a whole. The sun rose high, then began to fall. Sweat soaked his back, his hands and feet, cut and bleeding from the thorns, yet he did not give up. After many hours of patient work, at last a crude raft took shape. It was not beautiful nor sturdy, but to him it was the only hope of crossing. He lowered the raft into the river and climbed aboard, trembling. The water rose, rocking it unsteadily. His heart pounded, but he held on tight. The fierce current swept him along. He rode, clutched, and shivered. Freezing water splashed over him, numbing his body. At times, waves nearly overturned the raft, threatening to sweep him back into the whirlpool. But with every ounce of strength, he kept balance, clinging to the raft, as if clinging to life itself. Little by little, he drew nearer to the far bank. Each stroke was a struggle between life and death. But with the raft, he endured and crossed the danger. At last, exhausted but alive, he collapsed onto the dry shore. Before him lay a peaceful land of green trees and birdsong. He was safe. Relief washed over him, and he smiled. But then he turned back to the raft. A thought arose. This raft is so precious. Without it, I would have died. It saved my life. I must carry it with me. Who knows when I might need it again? So he lifted the raft onto his shoulders. At first, he had strength enough. His shoulders strained, but he walked a few steps. It's fine, I can carry it, he told himself. But soon, the weight pressed down. Each step grew harder. He no longer noticed the beauty along the road. Birds sang, flowers bloomed. The wind cooled his face, but all was lost beneath the burden on his back. The road ahead, wide and peaceful, became torture, not because of thorns or beasts, but because he carried what had once saved him, though it was no longer needed. When the Buddha told this story, he stopped here, looking at his disciples. He asked, "Do you think that man should carry the raft forever or leave it behind at the riverbank?" The disciples were silent. In their hearts, the answer was clear. Keeping it would only weigh him down. Setting it down was true freedom. The Buddha smiled gently and said, "My teachings are like that raft. They are a means to help you cross from suffering to peace. But once you have reached the shore, do not cling. Do not turn the means into a burden." At first, this may sound like a simple fable, but if we reflect deeply, we see it mirrors life today. How many times have you clung to rafts that once helped you, but are no longer needed? An old belief that once guided you, but is now outdated. A relationship once important, but now only chains you down. A past success that you keep boasting about, but which prevents you from moving forward. Holding on feels like honoring the past, but in truth, it only makes the present journey heavier. Letting go does not mean betraying the past. Letting go means honoring what once helped you, then setting it down at the right time so your shoulders are free to continue. The traveler in the story finally realized the raft was only useful on this side of the river. Once across, it had fulfilled its purpose. If he held it, it became chains. If he set it down, he was truly free. So it is with practice and with life. Some things, some methods help us through hardships. But once we have crossed, we must let them go. Otherwise, we only trade one burden for another. Freedom does not come from clinging. Freedom comes from knowing when to put things down. Do you see? The story, though, simple reflects our very lives. How often have you been like that traveler? A method, a belief, a habit once carried you through hard times, but you keep clinging long after it no longer fits. Some hold on to an old job just because it once brought stable income, even though now it drains their health and joy. Some clutch a relationship long since emptied of love just because once it was their refuge. Some cling to a habit, a principle, just because it once served them in another stage of life. All these things, when useful, are the raft that helps us cross. But once across, if we still carry them, they are nothing but a burden. This story is simple, yet it contains a profound lesson. Some things are necessary for a time, but if we cling to them, they become chains. What helped us around one bend may not help us on the next path, yet we so often refuse to let go. Can you see many times in life we are like that traveler, carrying invisible rafts on our backs? They may be old beliefs, a habit that once kept us safe, a principle that once brought success, or even a relationship that once gave joy. At the time, it was a raft. But if we cling past its season, it turns into a weight. I have met many people who lived their whole lives in this struggle. Some, when young, learned to control and hold tightly to build a career. That very trait carried them through hardship. But later in life, when they needed to relax and release, they could not. They carried the raft of their success on their shoulders until every step grew heavy. In the end, they could not enjoy the peace of their later years. Some people go through pain and build walls to protect themselves from being hurt again. In that stage, the wall is like a raft, helping them survive the crisis. But later, when they need to open their hearts to love and connect, they still cling to that wall of defense. And so they live closed off, lonely, with no chance to receive love. Have you ever been like that? Have you ever realized you were still carrying an old raft on your shoulders just because you couldn't bear to set it down? In the Buddha's teaching, the Dharma itself is like a raft. It is a means that helps us cross the river of birth and death, suffering and ignorance. But the Dharma is not something to cling to. Once we have reached the other shore, we must also let go of the raft. If not, even the Dharma becomes a burden. This may sound strange, but it is very close to our lives. Even good things, if clung to, can become chains. Like praise, when you receive it, you are happy. But if you hold on to it, you begin to live always craving praise, and when it no longer comes, you suffer. Or like a belief, once it supported you, but if you hold it rigidly, it can prevent you from accepting new truths. There is a saying, don't carry your boat on the mountain, because a boat is only useful on the river. Once you are on the mountain, carrying it only makes you weary. I want you to think of yourself. What rafts are you carrying? Perhaps it is old pride, once I was so successful. Perhaps it is a love that has ended, but you still hold in your heart both longing and hurting. Perhaps it is a fear that once protected you, but now only holds you back. Do you see that these things, once a means, are now chains? Once I met a man in his 70s. He said that all his life he had lived with strict discipline, raising his children with rigid rules. Because of that, his family was once very orderly. But later, his children grew up and built families of their own. Yet he kept applying the same old ways, still wanting to control every little thing. He could not understand why his children had become distant. As we spoke, I told him, your discipline was once a raft, but now you have reached another shore. Your children are grown. What they need now is love and respect. If you keep carrying the raft of discipline on your back, you cannot walk with your children on this part of their journey. He fell silent, tears welling in his eyes. You see, even what is right, if not released, when the time has come, becomes wrong. What is fitting in one moment may not be in another. To know how to let go at the right time, that is wisdom. Letting go is not ingratitude, nor is it denial. Letting go means knowing how to honor the value of what is past, while also setting it down so you can keep walking. The traveler was not ungrateful for the raft. He was grateful, but he also knew to leave it by the riverbank. Without that, he could never go farther. Have you ever wondered how many years of peace you have missed simply because you refuse to set down certain rafts? Sometimes, just a memory, a habit, a fear, or a rigid belief. We carry them thinking they are part of us. But in truth, they are only temporary baggage. And baggage must be set down once the journey has moved on. In life, each person must cross many rivers, from childhood to adulthood, from youth to middle age, from middle age to old age. At each stage, we need different rafts. But if we cling forever to the old one, we will never taste the freedom of the new stage. I want you right now to pause and ask yourself, what in me was once useful, but is now only a burden? Perhaps it is perfectionism, once driving you to success, but now only draining your strength. Perhaps it is too much independence, once making you strong, but now keeping you from opening up to others' help. Perhaps it is rigid standards, once helping you maintain your image, but now only making you lose comfort and closeness. If so, learn to set them down. Not to deny them, but to be free. Because you can only live fully when your hands no longer carry such weight. The story of the raft across the river is a gentle but profound reminder everything in life, even the Dharma, is only a means. What helps you today may not be needed tomorrow. And wisdom is not only in knowing what to hold, but also in knowing when to let go. When you practice releasing what belongs to the past stage, you will feel your heart grow lighter. Your steps will be freer. Happiness will come closer. And you will understand freedom does not come from adding more, but from carrying less. 5. The story of the mother who lost her child. The truth of impermanence. Long ago, there was a young woman who had just lost her only son. Yesterday, the child was still in her arms, still laughing, still crying, still breathing warm breaths. Today, that little body had turned cold. She could not believe it. Her heart felt torn into pieces. In her despair, she carried her child's body everywhere, crying and begging. She knocked on every door, pleading, "Please help me. There must be some kind of medicine, some miracle that can bring my child back to life." People pitied her, but no one had a solution. Finally, someone told her, "Go to the Buddha. Perhaps he will give you an answer." The mother holding her child dragged herself to where the Buddha was teaching. Her eyes were red from tears. Her voice trembling, she knelt before him and cried, "World honored one, please save my child. Please give me the medicine that will bring him back. I cannot lose him." The Buddha looked at her. His eyes were filled with compassion, yet also clear with wisdom. He did not rush to comfort her, nor did he deny her pain. He simply said gently, "I can help you. But first, bring me a handful of mustard seeds. Only one condition: the seeds must come from a family where no one has ever died." Those words lit up a spark of hope in her heart. Just a handful of mustard seeds, she thought. Surely every house has them. She immediately ran, child in arms, knocking on doors. At the first house, they listened to her story and replied, "We have mustard seeds. But our father passed away long ago. We are not a family untouched by death." She moved on to the second house. They shook their heads. "Our mother has died. We cannot give you the kind of mustard seed you seek." Then the third house, the fourth. Everywhere she went, she heard the same thing: every family had lost someone. There was no household untouched by death. At first, she still clung to a shred of hope. But the more doors she knocked on, the slower her steps became. The pain in her heart remained, yet among her tears, a truth began to shine, one she had never dared face before. No one escapes death. She realized she was not the only mother who knew grief. Every family she visited had its own story of loss. Some had lost a father, some a mother, some a child. Suffering was not hers alone, it was part of life. By now, her tears were no longer just cries of despair. They flowed quietly, like a cleansing. She held her child, sat down by the roadside, and in that silence, she began to understand. Impermanence is the truth that cannot be denied. In the Buddha's teaching, impermanence is not a threat, but a simple reality. All life, from the flowers in the garden to the stars in the sky to this very body, goes through the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. No one rich or poor, powerful or ordinary can escape it. That young mother, in the pain of losing her child, was guided to see this truth through her own experience. Not through abstract philosophy, but through every door she knocked on, every answer she received, every step she took. If you hear this story today, you may see yourself in it. Perhaps you too have lost someone you love, your parents, a spouse, a friend, even a beloved pet. Perhaps you once wished, if only there were a miracle to bring them back. But time, like the Buddha whispers, there is no family untouched by death. Perhaps you are still holding the pain of separation in your heart, but if you cling to it, it will drown you. Only by accepting the truth of impermanence can you rise, take a deep breath, and continue living fully. You see, this story is not only the tragedy of a mother long ago, it is also a mirror reflecting the grief of countless people today. We live in a world of constant change, yet our hearts long for permanence. We want our loved ones to stay forever. We want joy never to end. We want youth never to fade. But the truth is, no one escapes impermanence. You may have faced loss yourself. Perhaps a loved one passed away. Perhaps a relationship ended. Perhaps a dream never came true. You suffered, you struggled, you wished it hadn't happened. But in the end, didn't you realize it was an unchangeable truth? What makes us suffer is not only loss itself, but our resistance to loss. When we cling to the illusion of permanence, we create even more pain. When we believe, my loved one must live forever, or this joy must never end, then when change comes, we fall into despair. But if we accept that everything is impermanent, we will not be shocked when change arrives. A man once told me he could never forget the day his wife died. They had lived together for over 40 years. She passed away after an illness, leaving the house empty. His grief was so deep, he could not step into their bedroom again. For years, he left everything exactly as she had afraid to change a single thing. Every night he sat alone, as if she had just left yesterday. When he came to me, he asked, "How can I escape this pain?" I could not give him a medicine. I could only share. No one can keep a loved one by their side forever. Your pain is the pain we all share. But if you learn to let go, not letting go of love, but letting go of resistance to impermanence, then your love will transform into gratitude, into cherished memory. And then you will feel your wife still with you in your heart, but no longer as a burden. Do you see? Letting go does not mean forgetting. Letting go means accepting that it was time for it to leave and allowing it to remain in your heart as a peaceful memory. In your own life, you too have faced loss. Maybe you have lost parents or seen friends and loved ones depart. Maybe you have watched youth slip away from your own face, and perhaps you too have wished, if only nothing would change. But you know impermanence is the very nature of life. Without impermanence, how could a seed crack open and bloom into a flower? Without impermanence, how could a child grow into an adult? Without impermanence, how could wounds in your heart eventually heal? Impermanence not only takes away, it also gives. The problem is, we often see only what impermanence takes and forget what it offers. We cry when a flower falls, but forget that only when flowers fall can fruit be born. We grieve when a chapter ends, but forget that only because it ends can a new beginning appear. Have you ever asked yourself, if I did not cling to permanence, would I still suffer this much? Imagine if from the start you had accepted that everything is impermanent, that your loved ones would one day leave, that you yourself would age and die. Then when it came, you would still feel pain, but not despair. You would cry, but you would not be imprisoned by sorrow. You would know it is simply the way of life. In Buddhism, letting go is the way to face reality. Not avoiding, not forgetting, but daring to see and to accept. When you let go, you are no longer chained by the illusion that things must last forever. Then you find peace because you move with the flow instead of fighting it. I know for you, letting go can feel like the hardest thing, especially when it comes to someone you love deeply or something you held on to your whole life. But remember, letting go is not losing, it is opening. When you let go, you open your heart to truth. You open your heart so love can transform into gratitude, memory can turn into comfort, and pain can become strength. The mother in the story only found peace when she understood that no family in this world has ever been untouched by death. Death is not the exception, but the common truth. And in realizing that she was able to finally set down her child's body and begin her journey of healing, you too, perhaps in your heart, there is still a pain you have not yet set down. But if you dare to look directly into the truth of impermanence, you will see you are not alone. We all must pass through it. And when that happens, instead of resentment, you will learn to be grateful for every moment that remains. So the lesson from the story of the mother who lost her child is this: have the courage to face impermanence. Do not cling to the illusion of immortality. Do not believe that anything will stay with us forever. For when you cling, you will suffer. But when you let go, you will be free. Perhaps you are not ready to let go completely, but you can begin with a small step. Acknowledge that change is real. Simply acknowledging it already lightens the burden. And as you continue to practice, you will see that you can stand firm even in the face of great loss. My dear friend, remember, this impermanence is not the enemy. It is simply the truth. And when you walk with the truth, you will find peace. As the Buddha taught, all things are impermanent. And within impermanence itself, we learn to love more deeply, to cherish more fully, and to let go more gently. 6. The story of the monk and the torn robe. When simplicity becomes the path back to freedom. On a distant mountain, there was a small temple. It wasn't grand, with no golden statues or finely carved beams. It was simple, with an old tiled roof, a few walls weathered by time, and a garden full of fresh green vegetables. There, a Zen master lived for many years quietly and peacefully. This monk had nothing much except for an old robe that had been with him through many seasons. The robe was worn at the shoulders, patched in places, and some fabric had faded with age. To many, it was no longer suitable to wear in front of visitors. Yet on the monk's face, there was always a bright smile, gentle eyes radiating a peace that calmed anyone who came near. One day, a wealthy merchant passed through the mountain and stopped at the temple to ask for water. As soon as he stepped inside, he was surprised to see the monk in such an old robe. He frowned, studied him carefully, and exclaimed, "Master, why are you wearing such a tattered robe? In this world, people judge each other by appearance. Aren't you afraid others will look down on you?" The merchant spoke sincerely, for he was used to seeing the world through the lens of wealth status and luxurious clothing. To him, a torn robe meant poverty, inferiority, and a lack of value worthy of respect. But the monk only smiled. He gently stroked his robe and replied slowly, calmly, "A torn robe does not take away even a fraction of my peace. Happiness does not lie in a piece of fabric. Happiness is in the mind, not in what I wear outside." At first, the answer sounded too simple, yet it left the merchant standing silently. He looked again at the monk's sunburnt skin, kind smile, and eyes that seemed to reflect the whole mountain forest. Indeed, in this remote place, within a temple that had nothing valuable, the monk radiated a freedom the wealthy, powerful man had never known. In that moment, he saw the sharp contrast. He wore silk clothes, leather shoes, and carried jewels. Yet inside, he always felt heavy, worried about keeping his wealth, afraid of losing it, afraid of others surpassing him. He had never sat in stillness and felt peace. But the monk in a torn robe had nothing to cling to, nothing to fear losing. And because of that, he was free. In today's society, you can understand this lesson more clearly than ever. People are surrounded by advertisements and promises that if you buy more clothes, a new car, a bigger house, you will be happy. People rush into shopping as if that were the only path to peace. But do you realize the more things you have, the more you worry? You worry about debt, about keeping them safe, about not being as good as others. You tie your self-worth to the brand you wear or the title you hold. And like the merchant in the story, you may wear fine clothes while your heart feels torn. Meanwhile, the monk teaches something very simple. Happiness is not something to wear. It does not come from appearance, but from within. If your mind is clear and calm, then even in torn clothes, you are free. There is a profound truth in that torn robe. Every fray and patch is a mark of time, reminding us that everything is impermanent. Clothes wear out, beauty fades, status passes. If you put happiness in those things, then your happiness will fade with them. But if you place happiness in the mind, time cannot take it away. Everyone is the same. In this, when we die, no one takes clothes, cars, or houses with them. The only thing you carry is the state of your mind. And while you live, what you can share with others is not luxury clothing, but the peace shining from your smile, your eyes, and your heart. Just like the monk in the torn robe, anyone who met him felt peace, and that was the true treasure. Don't you see, in modern life, we are often trapped by appearances. We want a nicer house, a newer car, more fashionable clothes to prove to others that we are successful, that we matter. Yet the more we chase appearances, the emptier we feel inside. Perhaps you know people who, on the outside, have everything luxurious. Homes, closets full of clothes, plenty of money. But when you sit and talk, you hear them sigh. Why do I still feel restless, still feel lacking? That's because true happiness does not come from outside, but from ease in the heart. A beautiful garment may impress for a moment, but it cannot give lasting peace. A large house may make you proud, but if your heart is filled with worries, you will never truly enjoy it. Like a thirsty person? What use is a crystal cup if there is no water inside? Think back to a time in your life when things were simple, but your heart felt peaceful. Maybe sitting on the porch with a breeze passing by. Maybe wearing ordinary clothes, but surrounded by loved ones. Did you realize that peace came not from material things, but from the feeling of being yourself? The monk lived that truth. He was not bound by his torn robe, because he understood the essence of life is not in what we wear, but in whether our hearts are at peace. Today, many people between 30 and 70 whom I've met share the same fatigue. They've worked hard for years, achieved material success, but then realized the more they gained, the more they worried. Buying a bigger house brought mortgage debt. Owning an expensive car brought the stress of maintaining it. Filling the home with possessions only made the heart feel cramped. Do you see the paradox? We think having more will bring joy, but actually, the more we carry, the heavier it feels. Like a climber, the fuller the backpack, the harder each step. Simplicity, on the other hand, brings freedom. Simplicity does not mean hardship or deprivation. Simplicity is knowing what is enough. Simplicity is not being bound by the need to prove yourself through outward things. Simplicity is not needing a new robe to feel valuable, not needing a big house to feel respected. Ask yourself, if tomorrow I only had what I truly needed, could I still be happy? Imagine your closet with just a few clothes, but ones that feel truly comfortable. Imagine your home, tidy with only what you use. Imagine your mind no longer comparing with others. Would you feel lighter? You may say, but I live in modern society. I cannot give up everything and live in rags like the monk. That's true. You don't need to become a hermit, but you can learn his spirit live simply, so your mind is free. Simplicity is not poverty. Simplicity is enough, not too much, not in comparison. Simplicity means not turning clothes, money, or status into the measure of a human being's worth. When you live simply, you worry less, stress less, and peace returns. The Buddha taught, knowing enough is wealth. A man in a torn robe, but with a peaceful mind, is richer than one in silk, but restless inside. True wealth is not measured by possessions, but by freedom of the heart. I recall a woman who once told me she used to shop to fill the emptiness in her heart. Whenever she was sad, she bought something new: clothes, shoes, decorations, until her house was crowded. But the more she bought, the lonelier she felt. One day, she decided to declutter. She gave away half her things, keeping only what she needed. She told me strangely, when my house was emptier, my heart felt bigger. I no longer needed to prove anything. I felt light. See, sometimes happiness comes not from adding more, but from having less. Not from putting on a new robe, but from smiling at the old one. The story of the monk and the torn robe may seem small, but it is a great reminder for today. True happiness is not in what we wear on the outside. Material things can be nice, but they do not decide peace. Only in simplicity do we find freedom. You do not need to prove your worth through possessions, because possessions are just a shell. When you let go of the need to prove yourself, you will find true peace. When you live simply, you return to the source of freedom. So I want you right now to ask yourself, what robes am I wearing to prove my worth? They may not be clothes. They may be titles, wealth, or social roles. Do you really need them for happiness, or do you just need a heart that is light and free? If you dare to set down the need to prove, you will see happiness is already near. It is not far away, not in expensive things, but right here in every peaceful breath, in every moment you live as your true self. The monk long ago wore a torn robe, but lived with peace. And you today, with all modern comforts, can you find that peace? If not, perhaps it is time to live a little more simply. Let go of what is unnecessary and return to listening to your own heart. For simplicity is not lack. Simplicity is freedom. And no robe can buy that freedom. My dear friend, the 6 Zen stories we have just walked through together are not just old tales of the past. They are mirrors reflecting today's life. The full cup reminds you that the mind must be empty for wisdom to enter. The 2 monks and the woman at the river teach you that some burdens exist only in your mind. The jar and the stone show that only by letting go can you receive. The raft across the river reminds that what once helped you must also be set down when the time comes. The grieving mother teaches that impermanence is a truth no one can escape. And finally, the monk with the torn robe shows you that simplicity is the true root of freedom. If you listen carefully, you will see they all circle around one thing: the art of letting go. Letting go is not losing, but opening. Opening for the mind, to be wide opening for life, to be light, opening for happiness, to have a place to rest. Thank you for spending time with me on this journey. If today's sharing touched your heart, please subscribe to Buddhism Seeds Press. Share this video with your loved ones, and leave your reflections in the comments. Who knows, your story may also be a seed of peace planted in someone else's heart. Because peace is always present the moment you know how to set your burdens down and smile at life.